Cold water hit me so hard it knocked the breath right out of my chest, the kind of shock that makes your brain go silent for a beat, and when I looked up through the spray, I saw the deputy on the property line smiling like he'd just taught me a lesson. He twisted the nozzle off, told me there were standards in this neighborhood, and I should learn them, and what he didn't know, what he couldn't imagine, was that he hadn't just drenched some new girl in a black dress. He'd declared a war he was never going to win. You know what I mean? One more second of staring, and I realized anger was a luxury I couldn't afford. Not here, not now, not if I wanted the truth to stick. So I turned shoes, squishing hair, dripping down my back like melted ice, and I walked into my house with my spine straight and my mouth closed because the best casework I've ever done started with silence. The dress went into an evidence bag. The shower burned the chill out of my bones. The tea kettle hissed, and by the time steam fogged the mirror, I had the first page of a mental case file, neat as a ledger, badge number 3274, Deputy Travis Cole, partner in the cruiser, pretending not to watch neighbors peeking through blinds, then melting away a little chorus of polite indifference that always hums when power performs for an audience. I sat down in gray sweats and a t-shirt at my desk facing 3 monitors and a plain notebook I like more than I should, and I started pulling threads in a way that looks slow until it isn't. On paper, Cole was a poster boy, commendations, photo ops, quotes about safety, but a map tells the truth if you let it, and his patrol car GPS drifted a little too often past the same blocks where complaint forms went to die with the word unfounded stamped across the top. The families in those blocks looked like me, sounded like me, tried to settle down like me. And a few months after the complaints were dismissed, their houses sold under market like somebody had leaned a thumb on the scale. You follow that pattern into county records and an LLC pops like a weed in fresh mulch. Cold Harbor Development Group. Bland name, P.O. Box, smiles for days. Yeah, that happened. I called the 2 people I call when a knot turns out to be a net. Jordan Pierce, civil rights attorney who can talk in a tone that makes mayors sit up straight, and Theo Nguyen, forensic analyst who sees money like some folks see constellations. We have a situation, I said to Jordan, and he didn't ask for drama. He asked for dates, times, and a drive he could open without triggering anything dumb. At his office, the wall screen filled up with lines and little red dots, and the story wrote itself in ugly cursive. A couple of strategic property buys, a few well-placed delays at the permit office, a steady drumbeat of patrol presence circling the blocks like a hawk. And then, when exhaustion and fear finally push families to take the first offer, the snap up the rubber stamp, the ribbon cutting the grant money, the flip the headline about revitalization signed by the same people who starved the place. You can dress it in policy language all day, but in the end it's the same 3 words every time: pressure, profit, pretense. We still needed the whisper line between the hose on my lawn and the hand that was counting the money. So Theo dug where digital footprints live, and what he found looked like a neighborhood app you'd show your grandma. Ridgewatch lost dogs, porch pirates, block party reminders. Except there was a private channel tucked underneath the bake sale posts members by invitation only, and the admin tag sat right next to Cole's name. The channel had a sweet old time name that would look at home on a church bulletin: Neighborhood Stability Committee. And you know how your stomach drops when you realize a term like stability is doing a lot of dirty work. Theo pulled up messages from the week I moved in, neat little exchanges that read like choreography: new element at 19 Alder, unacceptable, use the usual protocol, understood, will deliver the message. If you've never had a message delivered to you by someone with a badge and a smile, let me translate harassment dressed up as courtesy eyes on your house at odd hours, knock and talks that feel more like prying anonymous posts that say the neighborhood is changing with coded concern, your name left out on purpose because the code doesn't need it. They tried one that afternoon, 2 different deputies at my door with hands resting a little too casual near their belts. One of them saying they'd gotten a noise complaint and just needed to take a look. Me holding my phone up so the recording screen reflected in their pupils. My voice steady, asking for names and badge numbers, and stating for the record that I did not consent to a search without a warrant, then asking if I was being detained or under arrest. And you could feel it when the script slid off the rails for them, when intimidation met a boundary and had to back down the steps with that tight-lipped promise you've heard 1,000 times, the one that lives halfway between threat and pout. I labeled the file Intimidation Attempt 1 and sent it to Jordan with a 1-line note: "They're going to escalate," and his reply came back fast. They always do. He was right. The private channel lit up late the next night in a way that made the hair on my arms rise. Timeline moved up. Financing closes in 2 weeks. She's still in place. Fix it tonight, followed by understood. Will create cause. Create cause, the phrase is small and obscene, which is why you say it quiet, because what it means is fiction turned into handcuffs, a brick under a crawl space that wasn't there yesterday, a gun with its numbers filed off a baggie that turns suspicion into probable cause, and your home into a stage for someone else's show. We didn't argue about what to do. We prepared. 4 cameras live and quiet in the garden, and under the eaves, infrared ready motion triggered a lamp burning upstairs to make a silhouette for whoever was watching from the street. Microphones set, so even a careless breath on the lattice would sound like thunder in a courtroom. Around 1 a.m, a shadow peeled itself off the darker hedge and moved across my yard with a kind of confidence that only comes from practice, and even in black clothing and soft shoes, the shape was unmistakable, the way he carried his shoulders like he owned every inch he stepped on, the way he smiled a little when he slid my porch lattice aside, the way he brushed his prints with the side of his hand like he'd read about it once and decided he'd invented it. He tucked a smaller bag into the crawl space reset. The panel glanced up at the windows and walked off into the kind of darkness people call safe when they haven't had to prove it. I let 10 minutes pass, saved everything, and made a call I hadn't made in a long time. Public integrity duty officer. A woman answered, and I gave my name, my badge, my years, my need. A federal judge awake, a narrow set of warrants, eyes on a conspiracy with municipal fingerprints. By sunrise, the machine was in motion, not flashy, not loud, just disciplined, the way a well-tuned engine feels more than it sounds. At 7:06 a.m., a different kind of knock landed across the street, measured and final, and when Cole opened the door with toast in his hand, you could see the moment his face lost its excuses. The jackets read FBI. The lead agent read the warrant, the words conspiracy, evidence tampering, and deprivation of rights under color of law sat in the morning air like iron, and I stepped into his view so he could see the person he thought he'd soaked into silence. "It's Tuesday," I said, a little cruel maybe, "and you smiled when you planted it." "Yeah, that happened." The cuffs clicked behind his back, that same click I've heard 1,000 times that still makes my teeth set. And the search team went in and came out with exactly what you pray to find when you go to all this trouble. Burner phones, a ledger that only arrogant people write initials and amounts a P.O. box, that match the LLC, that match the filings, that match the way the map had felt in my bones from the start. 2 hours later, while the city's favorite councilman, Victor Hale, was on a stage talking about a new safety initiative like he'd invented the word neighbor, another team walked him off the dais with a hand on his elbow, and a microphone catching the beginning of a gasp, and the smile he'd practiced in the mirror for years, didn't know where to go. After that, truth moved fast, faster than gossip, faster than denial, because paper trails want to be read if you line them up right, and phones want to be listened to when the warrants are clean, and partners who thought they were covered start doing math on years and decide their voices work after all. 12 officers across 4 precincts, 3 city staffers who had treated permits like favors, 1 developer who pretended to be shocked until Theo put his own text on a screen. After Travis does his thing, 19, Alder should be ready, and you could feel a room full of defenders run out of air. The sheriff resigned. The Department of Justice put the county under a consent decree that stripped the slogans off the training slides and replaced them with steps someone could actually verify. Jordan filed a class action built out of names that used to be footnotes and turned them into plaintiffs. Cold Harbor's assets got seized the way a bad machine finally gets unplugged, and the news ran so hard the anchors started to sound tired. But the part that stuck with me wasn't the headlines. It was the quiet, strange days that come after a storm when you can hear your town think. The neighbor who had smiled at me tight behind the blinds took her campaign sign down and just stood on her porch with her arms folded like she was holding something heavy and invisible. Her kid riding a bike in hopeful circles, her mouth forming the word sorry without sound. The woman across the way, who used to cross the street to avoid my fence, brought over cuttings from her hydrangea like that could stitch anything back together, and I took them because I believe in plants and the way roots behave when you give them a chance. The high schooler who bagged my groceries asked what a consent decree was and why it wasn't in her civics book, and when I told her, she said thanks, like I'd handed her a flashlight. We had a public forum in the gym where the new chief didn't try to charm anybody. He used short sentences and named things without decorating them. People stood up and told stories. They'd folded small for years. A man cried. A girl asked a hard question and waited for an answer, like she expected one. A PTA leader turned around and apologized to a woman behind her for something she'd said online, and no choir started singing. But you could feel the room loosen a notch, like maybe honesty could be a habit if we wanted it. In my yard, I planted a line of white viburnum along the fence where he'd soaked me petals like little moons that glow at dusk, and a friend brought a small fountain and set it near the porch so the water would hush the street and give me a sound to measure mornings by. And when I sit there now with coffee and watch the light move across the leaves, I don't flinch when a car door closes, which feels like wealth you can't buy. Cole pled out, of course he did. The discovery would have cooked him twice, and when the judge asked who he thought he was protecting, he couldn't say the quiet part out loud. He just looked down at a table that didn't care about him and got a number. He'll be counting for a long time. Hale folded. Quicker than lawn furniture took a deal that read like a confession written in permanent marker. And for all the years he spent rebranding greed as growth, he never once learned to read the room when the room was a courtroom. People keep asking me if I feel victorious, and the honest answer is no. Victory sounds like a finish line, and I don't think the good stuff has one. What I feel is steadier than that, like proof, like a level bubble settling between two marks. Proof that small, careful acts, a saved dress, a recorded badge number, a phone held at the right angle, a camera placed where no one looks, can turn into a lever big enough to move something ugly. Proof that insisting beats shouting in the long run, proof that a place like Willow Ridge can look at itself without a filter and still decide to show up tomorrow. And if you're wondering, yes, the dress is fine, it dried on a hanger above the tub, and it's back in the closet for a day when it's just a dress again and not a piece of evidence, because that's a kind of healing too, letting objects return to their ordinary selves after they've been asked to carry too much. The twist in this story isn't the arrest at dawn or the ledger in the safe. Those are satisfying, sure, they scratch the itch for symmetry. The real twist is that the people behind the blinds mattered more than the man with the hose, that a town's soul can be hurt by silence as much as by force. That every time someone says that's just how it is, they hand their vote to whoever wants the power most. You know what I mean? So I sit on my porch sometimes with the fountain humming and the viburnum leaning over the fence, and I think about blueprints, not the kind in roles, the kind in habits. And I wonder who we want to be when nobody's watching, because that's when the next plan starts, good or bad. And I'd rather write the quiet kind that doesn't need a press conference to prove it exists. If you've listened this far, you probably know your own version of this story, maybe smaller, maybe louder. And I'm asking you to put it in the comments, not for me, for the kid on the scooter who reads and realizes they're not alone. Tell me what you think is more dangerous to a neighborhood's soul. The smiling man who swings the hose, or the folks who watch from behind the blinds and tell themselves it's none of their business. Tell me if justice to you is punishment or public rebuilding with receipts. Tell me if you've seen one small act of courage turn a whole block in a better direction. I'll be here drinking my coffee, watching the light through the leaves, hoping the next blueprint we draw together has more front porches and fewer blinds.